So Team Canada's playing in the World Baseball Classic, and so I'm wearing my Team Canada shirt today. I was fortunate enough to get this at one of our facilitations, I think, when I was working with, I guess it would have been the Blue Jays Academy. They hosted a bunch of camps for coaching the coaches, and as a learning facilitator with Baseball Ontario, I got invited to help with that, and it was a absolutely great opportunity. Got to meet some of my baseball heroes from when I was a kid through that and other events. So that was tons of fun. Looking at the World Baseball Classic, we don't get to hear too much about most of the Canadian players, but they certainly have a decent team this year and doing quite well. They're beating Colombia 3-1 right now as of the 7th inning, so that's nice to see. Ernie Witt continues to be the coach, and so I wish him and his squad the very best. A couple of names that you might recognize are the Naylor brothers. Josh obviously played against the Blue Jays during the playoffs last season, and I'm pretty sure he secured the largest signing bonus for a Canadian drafted player that's ever happened. So again, we'll see how the rest of the World Baseball Classic goes, and let me know your thoughts on that. But one of the things I mentioned while I was interviewing Jesse Top yesterday was that Rayanne and I are launching our own podcast, which is Naked Real Estate. We've been having a lot of fun working on that behind the scenes. We want to get a collection of interviews before we launch the actual program. You don't want to, put a couple out and then have to wait a couple weeks before you get any more complete. But it's certainly been fun doing that and putting those together, and we're looking forward to doing more interviews. One of the reasons why we were looking at doing a podcast was just an opportunity to talk to lots of people. We have great respect for some of the counterparts in our industry, and want to give them a platform and basically pick their brain on what they're investing in right now for real estate, how they're structuring it, what they're doing, what's going right, what's going wrong, and just what's going on in the marketplace in general. The benefit of talking to people that are boots on the ground, they see things that others who might be stuck behind a desk all day just don't see. So, as you have people out doing things, that in of itself is just a benefit to them and moving forward. It's why we take great pride in being out there and talking to clients, talking to other builders, talking to realtors, mortgage professionals, insurance agents, just really making sure that we are aware of what's going on in the marketplace. It's funny because a lot of the policymakers, the people that are behind the scenes to try and help with this housing crisis or whatever, we knew this was coming back in 2014, 2016. We had multiple conversations. This is why we created Georgian Huron Developments. This is why we created Kingwell Fine Homes, because we saw our clients consistently getting beat out in multiple offers. The housing crisis, didn't start in Guelph as an example. It was drive till you qualify, and what we were seeing was people in Toronto that couldn't find anything or buy anything there were going to Etobicoke, Mississauga, and people in Etobicoke and Mississauga, they were moving to Milton, Georgetown, that sort of stuff. And it just kept going out and out and out. So the housing crisis was never something that was created right in Guelph for those that were experiencing it in Guelph. It was the fact that you had all these neighboring cities that became unaffordable that were quickly pushing people to Guelph. And Guelph was pushing people to Fergus, Elora, Kitchener-Waterloo, Cambridge, and it continued to move down the highway. And we saw it. So, in 2014, we created Georgian Huron Developments. The whole thought was, how do we give our clients a leg up? How do we give them access to housing before it's even created? So for us, it was, we saw the need, we saw the housing shortage, that the demand was never an issue. What's hilarious is demand today is actually part of the issue, is that people just can't, it's an affordability issue. So, they have demand for supply that doesn't exist. The conversation I had today with John Chung, he's always speaking high level, talking to lots of builders, talking to lots of people about how do we help people get into housing, because there's a ton of builders that are not building to their capacity. They're holding back. They just can't afford to build and not be able to sell for what it costs them to build. The housing that they're putting forward is all the lowest level of cost that they can absolutely provide. And sometimes they're actually taking a loss on it just to keep their tradespeople engaged and active and not unemployed. So for us, as we continue to monitor that, how do we help with that? It's important to get out and actually talk to the people and see what is going on, and then being able to take that information back and have realistic conversations with people on how do we create opportunities that will allow people to get into housing. One of the things that we keep talking about is MLI Select, and what we're trying to figure out is, how do we help people buy houses? So the MLI Select program that we think is a genuine opportunity right now for investors to really expand their portfolio. Aside from offering additional supply into the marketplace, which should, keep prices on the buy and sell side stable, aside from offering that supply, it does not help directly with people who are, attempting to get into the market for ownership. And I would love to talk to people about how do we assist those people. And I don't know if it comes back to, creating additional dwelling units, maybe the triplex idea that we've shared and we continue to try and advocate for isn't just a rental triplex. Maybe it's an owner-occupied triplex where an individual, is able to build that out and rent out 2 of the units and live in the third at a cost that is affordable. But with today's marketplace, with the landlord-tenant bureau, it's not always a safe venture. So we're just trying to explore how that works. And oftentimes, if people are trying to get into the market, they're spending so much in rent right now, unless they're living in their parents' basement or with their parents still. They're spending so much per month on rent, they have no opportunity to save for a down payment. And so we have down payment programs, we have down payment assistance, we can do lots of things, high ratio, so to minimize the down payment. But when you start talking about building, the expectation is that you're bringing 10, 15%, 20% of the end cost to the table if you're looking to control that process. So perhaps you're able to get into a production home that a builder's already built or on spec or whatever. Maybe you're able to get in for minimal deposits. But if you start making any changes, a builder's got to protect themselves against having an unsellable home by taking additional deposits. So when we did our production homes, we did 16 net zero and net zero ready homes in Ingersoll. We were requiring a minimum of 10%, and we were at the low end. So again, it's how do you structure something to help people that are just attempting to get into the market? Because Rand and I had a conversation a couple days ago. There's an entire generation, and we hope that it's not going to be a systemic problem, but there's an entire generation of people coming into the marketplace that are potentially completely disenfranchised with home ownership, that they don't think it's ever going to be possible, that they can save and save and save and save, but you just can't keep up with what's required for down payment based on the rising house prices. So when the average, and this isn't at the high end, when the average home in and around Guelph and London is at $700,000-800,000, and if you spend less than that, how much extra are you spending per month just to maintain it? Because just like a car, you buy a brand new car, comes with the extended warranty. You know if it needs X, Y, Z, it's going to be covered as part of that initial package. It might need snow tires or whatever. It's no different than a house. You buy a new home, the expectation is that aside from furnishing it and some window coverings and maybe a deck or a fence, that monthly you're not going to be dishing out a ton of money in repair work. You don't have to update the light fixtures. You don't have to redo countertops. You don't have to figure out how to fix a leaky toilet. So people that are getting into the market, especially if they're trying to do a single detached, you're coming to the table with a significant down payment. And how do we help those people get into the market without bankrupting themselves? So again, the demand side of things is one thing. The supply, I think we still have a long way to go in terms of working through government programs. We try to dialogue with policymakers on a fairly regular basis. Through the Realtor Association, we have a roundtable as an example. And at this roundtable, we're very fortunate in Guelph, especially, that Mayor Cam joins us at the table, that MPP Michael Schreiner joins us at the roundtable, and we're still waiting for our MP to join us, and I won't say anything further about that, but her predecessor failed to join us for his entire tenure as well. So we have the policymakers. We invite the Home Builders Association. They're great at joining us. Habitat for Humanity to give us some insight on some of the affordable housing side of things. So collectively, we bring these people together to ensure that there's a dialogue to say, listen, here's some of the policies that are coming through at the municipal level. Here's some of the policies coming through at the provincial level. Here's what's going on at the federal level. How do we take advantage of that? What policies need to change at the municipality to allow builders or potential clients or whomever to take advantage of the changes at the federal or provincial level? So it's one of those things that we really try to break down those barriers, because supply continues to be an issue. Pre-COVID, our cost per square foot was in and around that 160 to 180. Today, probably closer to 210, 220. If you want some of the net zero stuff, it can creep up even higher because of the additional cost that comes with that. And that's not fancy appliances. That's not, special cabinets or, widgets. That's just the cost to dig the hole, put the foundation in, and build the house. So, there's a big jump there, and to get back to that 140, 160 is going to be near impossible because a lot of that's labor costs that's increased. We see a regular rise in certain material costs. Flooring's actually come down a little bit in the past couple of years. Lumber had that spike and then has come back down. So there's a bit of give and take there, but overall, when you've got, I'll call it a 50% increase from pre-COVID in terms of the per square foot building cost, and that doesn't include the almost 100% increase in municipal charges for development charges, building permits, and all that fun stuff. Those costs are borne ultimately by the consumer. And again, would love to hear feedback on what solutions we can employ. One last thought, and I'll finish on this. Had a great conversation. This actually goes back a couple years ago. We were sitting there with a couple builders and a couple people that worked in various charitable organizations. So very different ends of the spectrum in terms of their approach to housing and what housing needs were out there. But it was interesting to sit down, and the one person thought that the dirty word in the whole business when it came to housing was profit. We had to get rid of the word profit in housing. And I let them finish their thought because I didn't want to take away from that. But we've seen what builders that are contracted by municipalities or provinces to put that work together, what they charge, because it's a bureaucracy. There are added levels. It doesn't have that same streamline or efficiency that an individual home builder would or should have. So, my response to getting rid of the word profit was like, no problem, if you're prepared to pay more. And I don't think they understood where I was going with that. I was like, listen, if it costs a company who is working for the municipality, if it costs them $300 a square foot to build, but there's no profit, or it costs a home builder $240, $220 a square foot, but they have their profit margin in that, which one's better for the consumer? Who can build more for less? And I said, gouging, certainly, that's not good, but you still have to be able to incentivize a builder to make profit, or by making profit. So again, it's not just so black and white to say, listen, you got to put it back in the municipality's hands, or you got to put it back in the province hands to build these things, because it ultimately will cost us, the taxpayer, way more. What we need to do is figure out proper incentives at each level that will allow for builders to move forward and not have those loopholes that will allow for gouging or price fixing or any of that stuff, but be able to make sure that they're building out a certain product that is needed, and part of that can be just described as moving things through faster. So if you get rid of some of that red tape and allow a project to move as quick as possible, the interest cost and the opportunity cost of funds being tied up in that project lower, which ultimately brings the cost down. So again, that's just my thoughts on the subject, but I'd love to get any feedback you have. And in the meantime, go Canada.